The usual suspects? The Persian sun god Mithras and the Egyptian deity Horus. The popular theory, the one that makes your jaw drop and your eyebrows do an Olympic-level high jump, goes something like this. Mithras, too, was supposedly born of a virgin on December 25th, surrounded by adoring shepherds. Horus, meanwhile, was the result of a miraculous conception by Isis. On the surface, it's a smoking gun, isn't it? A pre-Christian deity sharing the same birthday and an equally implausible origin story? It just reeks of plagiarism. But here's where the plot thickens, and where the meticulous modern scholar, often to my mild annoyance, steps in to ruin a perfectly good conspiracy theory. When you actually, painstakingly, consult the dusty scrolls and ancient inscriptions, the story isn't quite so neat. Take Mithras, for instance. The actual historical evidence for his cult tells a vastly different and frankly far less graceful origin story. Mithras wasn't born of a virgin woman at all. Oh no, that would be far too conventional. He was said to have sprung, fully formed, and muscular from a rock. Yes, you read that right. A rock. Comparing that to the relatively demure, though still fantastical, birth of Jesus is like comparing a statue chiseled from a granite quarry to a baby born from a human womb. Both result in a figure, sure, but the process couldn't be more different. One involves childbirth, the other, geological exfoliation. I mean, imagine the postpartum care for that delivery. And what about that December 25th birthday? That date was already a hot ticket in the Roman calendar, a sprawling festival of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. This festival was established long after the Gospels were supposedly written. Many scholars, including some who probably iron their socks, believe Christians later picked December 25th, not because it was Jesus' actual birthday. They had no idea, bless their hearts. But to compete. It was like a new artisanal coffee shop opening right next to a bustling Starbucks and running its own holiday special. They aren't copying the Starbucks signature latte recipe. They're just trying to snag the same caffeine-addicted customers on the same busy day. It's shrewd business, not divine instruction. As for Horus, the Egyptian darling, his mother Isis did perform a miracle of conception, but it involved her magically reassembling the dismembered body of her dead husband, Osiris, to conceive little Horus. Now, that's certainly a miracle, and a rather messy one at that, but it's decidedly not a virgin birth. Calling it one is like calling a Michelin star meal just food. It ignores the most crucial, and frankly most bizarre, details. Yes, she conceived miraculously after her husband was chopped into 14 pieces and she put him back together like a divine jigsaw puzzle. Doesn't quite have the same ring, does it? What does this tell us? It reveals a frustratingly consistent pattern from the perspective of someone trying to pin down ancient plagiarism. You find these broad, tantalizing, thematic similarities, like divine births, or weird ways to get pregnant, but the specific claims of direct verbatim copy-pasting just don't hold water. The gospel accounts, while still fantastical, have a distinctly different flavor than the high mythology of gods bursting from rocks or reanimated corpses. It's like discovering that while two different authors both wrote a story about a dragon, One's dragon breathed fire and guarded gold, and the other's dragon was a sentient tax-collecting worm. Similar concept, vastly different execution. However, and this is where my atheist and ex-Christian brain kicks in and winks knowingly, even if they weren't direct copycats, the vibe is undeniable. It's not plagiarism, it's inspiration. The ancient world was brimming with tales of miraculous births and divine interventions. If you're trying to launch a new religion, especially one that needs to stand out in a crowded spiritual marketplace, why wouldn't you borrow elements from successful narratives that people already recognized and revered? It's like Hollywood remaking a classic superhero origin story, but with slightly different special effects and a fresh-faced lead. You're not copying. You're reimagining for a new demographic. And who better to reimagine the ultimate hero than a group of clever scribes with a monumental agenda? Next up on our tour of suspiciously familiar tales is Jesus' first public miracle in the Gospel of John, turning water into wine at a wedding. Now, for the keen-eyed secularist, this screams Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, revelry, and just generally having a ridiculously good time. The argument on its face seems watertight, pun intended. Dionysus was famous for wine-based shenanigans. So the theory goes, the Gospel of John simply gave a classic Dionysian power to its new leading man. Some even argue that when Jesus later declares, "I am the true vine," it was a direct lyrical jab at Dionysus, who was also symbolized by the humble but potent vine. It's like a pop star dissing a rival in a new track. My vine is truer than your vine. But alas, the scholarly buzzkill brigade once again pipes up with a resounding, "Not so fast." They point out key differences because apparently details matter when you're dealing with ancient mythology. In most Dionysian myths, he just causes wine to appear from a spring or to flow abundantly. He doesn't actually transform one substance, boring old H2O, into another intoxicating phenol. The difference, they argue, is like a magician who pulls a rabbit out of a hat versus one who turns the hat itself into a rabbit. One is making something appear, the other is fundamentally changing what's already there. One is a cool parlor trick. The other is, well, still a parlor trick, but with more impressive molecular rearrangement. And the theological meaning, they insist, is completely different. For Dionysus, wine is about pure, unadulterated ecstasy, getting gloriously, ritually wasted. For Jesus, the miracle is a sign pointing to his divine identity, a kind of metaphysical billboard announcing, "Hey, I'm kind of a big deal." This perspective argues the miracle has deeper roots in Jewish traditions about messianic feasts, where wine flowed freely as a symbol of divine blessing. So while the main ingredient, wine, is the same, the purpose is completely different. One is for a wild, naked, goat-sacrificing party. The other is the first course in a sacred, symbolic meal, probably with fewer goats and considerably more sermons. Now pause for a moment. Even with these distinctions, Can we really say the gospel authors weren't operating with an eye on the competition? If you're trying to elevate your spiritual superhero, giving him the power to fix a party's biggest problem, running out of booze, is sheer genius. It's relatable, it's practical, and it immediately sets him apart. Oh, your God just makes wine appear? My guy makes wine from water. Beat that! This isn't divine creativity. It's basic religious marketing. You're launching a new product, and you want to ensure it has all the bells and whistles, plus a few key features that outshine the guy down the street. And what's more appealing than a guy who can keep the drinks flowing at a wedding? Clearly, these gospel writers understood their audience's priorities. And of all the supposed parallels between Jesus and pagan deities, the one that goes right for the heart of Christianity is the resurrection. For a long time, critics have argued that this is the ultimate borrowed myth, lifted straight from a popular ancient trope known as the dying and rising God. The usual suspects here are figures like the Egyptian god Osiris. He's murdered, chopped into pieces, a lot of pieces apparently, 14 if you're counting, and his wife Isis, bless her diligent heart, revives him, at least enough to conceive Horus. To many, this sounds eerily similar to the story of Jesus' death and dramatic return. But just like with our other examples, when you actually spend 5 minutes reading the myths instead of just the sensationalized summaries, the comparison starts to fray faster than my last pair of socks. Osiris isn't resurrected back to his old life on Earth, ready for a divine stand-up tour. No. He gets a promotion. He becomes the king of the underworld. The difference is huge. It's like someone surviving a near-fatal car crash and returning home versus someone who dies in the crash and becomes the ghostly traffic warden of the afterlife. Osiris rules the realm of the dead. He doesn't conquer death to walk again among the living. He's more like Hades than a zombie with good intentions. And the stories of Attis and Adonis, even weaker parallels. Attis, a Phrygian deity, castrates himself and dies, then is either partially revived or his spirit lives on through vegetation. Adonis, a Syrian god, is killed by a boar and returns from the underworld seasonally, often linked to agricultural cycles. They're less about a bodily resurrection and more about the cyclical death and rebirth of nature. In fact, that whole scholarly category of dying and rising gods, the one that got so many YouTube atheists excited, has been largely rejected by modern historians. They argue it's like creating a music genre called songs with guitars. You could lump folk, metal, and blues together, but you'd be ignoring the massive differences that actually define them. You'd be missing the nuances that, frankly, make for a much less satisfying gotcha moment. The Christian idea of resurrection, these scholars argue, comes from a different source entirely. Jewish apocalyptic beliefs, which always promised a future resurrection of the dead at the end of days. The pagan myths explained ongoing agricultural cycles like a Ferris wheel that goes around and around with the seasons forever repeating. The Gospels presented Jesus' resurrection as a rocket ship, a one-time, unprecedented cosmic launch event that broke out of the cycle of death forever. It was, in essence, the ultimate mic drop. Okay, fine. The Jesus copy pagan gods theory might be a bit of a stretch in the direct plagiarism department, but let's not congratulate the gospel authors too much on their original thought. Even if they weren't copy-pasting, the concept of a heroic figure overcoming death is a narrative goldmine. Humans, bless our little existential hearts, crave stories of victory over the ultimate end. It's the ultimate happily ever after for your followers. A promise of eternal life that's far more appealing than becoming an underworld bureaucrat or a seasonal vegetable god. If you claim to write a story that inspires billions, you'd better include the ultimate plot twist, beating death itself. It's just good storytelling. Or, if you're feeling cynical, excellent religious bait and switch. So if the parallels aren't as strong as they seem, and if direct plagiarism is a bit of a stretch, why is this theory still so popular? And, more importantly, why would anyone bother making up the Jesus story in the first place? This brings us back to our big question, the one that truly tickles my atheist and ex-Christian funny bone. Why? What was in it for the anonymous scribes and early Christian communities who painstakingly crafted and decimated these tales? Turns out, the benefits of writing religious fan fiction are surprisingly robust. One argument, touched upon in the provided notes, is what I like to call divine marketing. The early Christians lived in a crowded marketplace of religions, jostling for attention with cults to Caesar, mysteries of Isis, and various local deities. To make their new guy Jesus appealing, they allegedly dressed him up in the clothes of a pagan god, or at least gave him powers that resonated with familiar miraculous narratives. It's like taking a local folk hero and giving him a superhero cape, laser eyes, and the ability to fly to make him more marketable to a global audience. This view frames the gospel writers as clever myth makers, savvy entrepreneurs of the soul. But let's broaden our scope, shall we? Because the benefits of creating a compelling spiritual narrative extend far beyond mere competitive marketing. From an atheist and ex-Christian perspective, the why isn't about divine inspiration. It's about deeply human ambition and the primal urge for power, security, and meaning. So let's be brutally honest. Founding a religion, or even just being a key storyteller within one, gives you unparalleled power. You get to write the rules. You get to interpret the divine will. You become the gatekeepers to salvation, the exclusive tour guides to the afterlife. Who needs a petty temporal kingdom when you can control people's eternal souls? Imagine the authority, the unquestioning obedience. God told me to tell you is a pretty sweet trump card in any argument. The gospel authors, whatever their original intentions, inadvertently laid the groundwork for an institution that would shape empires, wage wars, and dictate morality for millennia. That's a serious legacy, far more impactful than, say, writing a particularly catchy jingle for ancient olive oil. Think about it. From obscure fishermen, tax collectors, or anonymous scribes to the authors, or at least propagators, of eternal truth, that's a serious glow-up. Yeah, imagine the dinner invitations, the automatic respect, the endless supply of free sandals. Being involved in the creation of a new, wildly popular spiritual movement would elevate one's social standing exponentially. Suddenly, you're not just another dude selling fish. You're privy to divine secrets, rubbing shoulders with a spiritually elite. And let's not forget the afterlife perks. If your story is believed, you're practically guaranteed a VIP pass to the endless paradise. It's the ultimate form of self-promotion. While the early Christians might have started poor, the long game of religion often pays off handsomely. Building a community, inspiring fervent belief, and promising eternal rewards inevitably leads to earthly tithes, offerings, and donations. Fast forward a few centuries, and Christianity is sitting on more real estate, wealth, and priceless artifacts than a global property developer with an endless credit line. The gospel authors might not have envisioned Vatican City, but they certainly laid the foundation for an institution that would become incredibly materially rich. It's a pyramid scheme with a divine CEO, where the ultimate reward is in the next life. But the earthly benefits are surprisingly tangible for the faithful at the top. In a chaotic, often brutal ancient world, creating a shared narrative and a common belief system provided immense comfort, belonging, and social cohesion. It's the ultimate social club with added benefits of eternal life. Membership fees apply, usually in the form of moral compliance. People crave identity, purpose, and a sense of belonging. The Jesus story, with its emphasis on love, community, and radical inclusion, at least initially for some, offered just that. It forged a powerful, enduring tribe. The gospel authors were like the ultimate community organizers, but with far better marketing materials and a much more compelling reason to show up every Sunday. A compelling religious narrative can also serve as a powerful tool for social change, or at least social management. The stories of Jesus offered a moral framework, a promise of justice for the oppressed, and a sense of meaning in a world often devoid of it. They provided hope to the marginalized, comfort to the suffering, and a compelling reason for people to behave themselves, lest they face eternal damnation. It's a brilliant way to manage a population, offering both carrot and stick for compliance. If you're looking to create a more orderly, compassionate, or simply controllable society, a good prophet and a few miracle stories can go a long way. Finally, perhaps the simplest, most human motive of all. People love a good story. And sometimes they love it so much they can't resist improving on it, embellishing, or creating new installments. Who hasn't exaggerated a tale to make themselves sound more important, or to make a mundane event seem miraculous? The Gospels, in this light, are just the ultimate fan fiction, where the authors happened to be the biggest fans of their central character, and also his ad hoc PR team. They took a charismatic Jewish preacher, likely a truly decent fellow who said some genuinely wise things, and elevated him to cosmic significance. They filled in the blanks, added the dramatic flair, and gave him lines that would echo through history. It's a testament to the power of human creativity, even if that creativity was leveraged for eternal gain. Now, some scholars and devout believers will counter with the argument that the Gospels couldn't possibly have copied pagan myths because Christianity was born as a sect within first century Judaism and deeply opposed to pagan ideas. They claimed Jesus, his disciples, and the Gospel writers were all Jewish, and their primary source book was the Hebrew Bible. From this perspective, they weren't copying a rival's playbook. They were writing the final chapter of their own story using a rule book, the Hebrew Scriptures, that had been in development for centuries. His miracles echo prophets like Elijah and Elisha, and his resurrection is seen as the ultimate fulfillment of God's promises to Israel. And to do that, I say, wonderful. That doesn't change a thing about the human motivation. Even with established traditions, there's always room for a radical reinterpretation, a new covenant that conveniently puts you at the center of the new revelation. It's not copying paganism. It's reforming Judaism with a blockbuster sequel, complete with plot twists, dramatic sacrifices, and a guaranteed happy ending. The benefits, the power, the influence, they're all still there, whether you're drawing from ancient pagan wells or creatively reinterpreting millennia of Jewish prophecy. It's all about crafting a compelling narrative, one that hooks the masses and keeps them coming back for more. So, while the direct copy-paste theory regarding pagan myths might be a bit too simplistic for the pedants, the underlying spirit of myth-making for tangible human benefit remains vibrantly clear. The gospel authors, whoever they were not just innocent chroniclers. They were brilliant storytellers, savvy marketers, and perhaps deeply ambitious individuals who saw an opportunity to create something truly monumental. They crafted a narrative so compelling, so emotionally resonant, and so strategically beneficial that it has endured for 2 millennia, shaping civilizations and captivating billions. They may not have plagiarized Osiris's resurrection or Dionysus's wine tricks verbatim, but they certainly understood the blueprints of powerful, persuasive storytelling. They understood what people craved: miracles, promises of eternal life, a charismatic leader, and a clear path to salvation. And they delivered in spades, creating not just a religion, but perhaps the greatest, most enduring, and most profitable piece of fan fiction the world has ever known. So the next time you hear a miraculous tale, or a story that promises eternal rewards for very specific behaviors, maybe pause, lean in, ask yourself, with a healthy dose of skepticism and a mischievous twinkle in your eye, who profits from this story, and how might I inadvertently be contributing to their grand ancient scheme? The answers might not be divine, but they'll certainly be human, and often quite enlightening. Now, if you appreciated this little peek behind the curtain of biblical narrative, and if your own secular spidey sense is tingling with renewed vigor, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video, hit that like button, and maybe even subscribe for more irreverent takes on the sacred cows of history. After all, critical thinking is the ultimate superpower, and unlike other powers, it's entirely real.